Hey, how's it going out there, folks? Good morning. Welcome back here to a Monday, 10:13 a.m. Monday morning, August 11th, 2025 is the date. Latest activity here shows a 2.5 and a 3.2 in the green flag across the area of Turkey. That's a region that had a 6.1 earthquake yesterday. I don't see any signs yet that we're looking at anything bigger in this area. This is actually a fairly normal sequence of aftershock activity from a 6.1 in that region. Starting up here into the Pacific Northwest, don't let this map fool you. This is showing not a whole lot of activity around Mount Rainier volcano, which has been, it's been in the news recently here with a pretty big earthquake swarm. Instead, we got two earthquakes being reported from yesterday. Nothing happening today. I doubt that. Here's the latest seismograph station there around Mount Rainier volcano. This is today's UTC time up to the current time period here, about 10:15 or so West Coast time where I'm at. I'm not up in Washington, but down here in Northern California. What do you guys see out here? Can you guys spot a bunch of earthquake activity? I sure can. This is a seismograph station, a digital layout. This is starting to look something like what we've seen back on the beginning the beginning of the swarm. So this is today's date. Let me show you guys here as we go back to July. And the swarm started on the 8th. That was like the peak intensity. Now, okay, granted, it doesn't look something like this. That was the main event that really started things off. But if we go still within that swarm period window, it's starting to look a little bit something like this. These are the 2-pointers that hit, or close to being a 2-pointer. So we're not seeing stuff that, let me pop up a side-by-side so you guys can see the comparison. And I'm glad they fixed this, by the way. For the longest, for a couple days, they had it offline or showing a squashed reading. Amplitude here, as far as picking up quake noise, was squashed completely, so you couldn't see anything showing up. But, take a look at, this is on the 11th, so we're like 3 to 4 days into the swarm that was stirring up there across the area back in July. That was back then. This is now. I think we're starting to pick back up again. There's, if you were to count every single one of these quakes, and some of these are of the size where they can locate, many of these little, really tiny little speck ones here. You'd have to really look, right? Look up close to where the arrow's pointing at. See those little small ones? There's a dark one, another dark one. Those are unlocatable, meaning that they're not exactly able to pinpoint the exact magnitude, the depth of the earthquake, and the location and magnitude. So it's those are still earthquakes, but these other events here that we're seeing since looks like this stirred up around 9 o'clock or so last night and continued till this time period. These are ones that they should easily be able to locate, but as I've told you guys here in the last 5 or 6 days, they've put reporting of these quakes on the back burner. So this earthquake swarm is not dead. It hasn't died off. This is actually picking up, but nothing like we had seen back in the start of the swarm. But I tell you what, it is definitely noticeable here this morning with a bunch of earthquake activity occurring. And the located ones, I'm sure if you were to locate, being a seismologist here, you look at the graphs, determine proximity of the quakes, where they're at. There's got to be at least 15 or 20 on here that they could easily locate. But they've completely turned off and stopped reporting any earthquake activity that's occurring up there across that volcano. And the PNSN network is the ones that monitor this. So the USGS gets their data. This is the USGS here. They get their data from the PNSN network, which are the folks that run the Cascade volcanoes and earthquake monitoring up through the Pacific Northwest. So that is continuing here, folks. This is nothing big. I don't see any 2 range. I don't see any magma movement. Magma movement or harmonic tremor would show up on a thicker type of reading here. This is an error. Those occur, it seems like every 20 to 24 hours or so. Maybe just an instrument reset. I don't know. But these are, I do believe they're fluid quakes, hot fluid way down there. Which is above the magma chamber, but things are heating up down there to create this type of fluid movement within the volcano. So we may not see an eruption right away, but I do think this is a sign that things are starting to get going there, far as down the road. Who knows how long down the road, but fluid movement like this, there has to be a cause for it, right? What is creating all this fluid movement, hot fluid movement? This isn't cold water down there, I guarantee you. It's going to be hot. And it could be some volcanic gases seeping up with that as well. So this could be a start of something that may happen down the road here, a number of years, or who knows what. But we do got to continue to watch that there across Mount Rainier. And one thing I've noticed as well is across so this is Mount Rainier. If you go over to Mount St. Helens, we've actually noticed a little uptick as well across that area. Right up at the summit region. I'll show you guys. There's I don't think that's an earthquake. These are little small quakes, very small ones. But if we go back to I think it was the previous day, there's a localized event that never got reported. A couple other smaller ones in there. Are we working? Go back one more day. There's another local event. These S waves that you see are from large events across the globe somewhere. I don't recall the quakes and location, but those are S waves. But localized events seem to have stirred up there across Mount St. Helens as well. Not quite as intense as Mount Rainier, but you can see there's a number of earthquakes out here. And, nothing's showing up. If we look at the last 7 days here, supposedly there's only 4 earthquakes that were reported up there that they could locate it across Mount St. Helens. But I do believe that things are getting busy down below. Meaning that the subduction here of the Juan de Fuca plate, way down underneath the North American plate, you get to the mantle, the hotter material. That, I believe, is starting to maybe recharge the volcanoes out here. Just a little thought in my head, I don't see any signs of inflation going on. That would obviously be a bad sign. If one were to look at inflation and see that things are on the rise out here, then we'd have to... they would be raising the alert level up out here. But right now, that's not the case. I do want to double check the GPS stations here this morning up across that area. I'm going to start here at Mount St. Helens, up at the summit area, see if these are working or not. Are these working? 2018. This looks a little odd. This is 2014. That doesn't do any good. Let's go over here to the volcano page and maybe be able to get a little bit better access to data. By the way, green across the board for the volcanoes, but that may not stay that way. You just never know. Mount St. Helens right here, beautiful volcano. One of the more recent eruptions there in our lifetime. So there's a seismograph station there. A lot of noise out there, a lot of earthquakes showing up as well. I'm starting to wonder what some of these other events are. They look like deeper quakes happening underneath the area and away from the seismograph station. But there is there's definitely some earthquake activity up there across the summit area and underneath it. Let's check the gas emission stations real quick here. See if we got any elevated gas. Carbon dioxide here, fairly neutral. Hydrogen sulfide's offline. Well, here's our past month of hydrogen sulfide. Nothing of any abnormal readings on the graph that I'm seeing, which is good. Let's check out GPS stations here, though. Got to be hiding somewhere underneath here. We got one right up at the summit area. This is current, definitely current. There is seasonal. See, there's the seasonal. Basically, once everything starts to melt, the ground absorbs the water, the snow melt and whatnot. It acts as a sponge. That's why we see seasonal inflation out here in the summertime, up until it starts to, accumulate some snow again. But I don't see any signs of any rapid inflation aside from just the typical normal seasonal inflation events out here throughout the years. If this was inflating, this is at the Mount St. Helens area, it would be going up. We would notice it. Same for the Mount Rainier area, which we'll double check here real quick. It's just crazy amount of earthquake activity there, and it's some rapid fluid movement happening down there. GPS. Oops, meant to turn that on. See, the ones that are working, and I got an email from an individual that mentioned the reason why some of these are offline, and it makes sense here, is that the instruments that they put in up there, the harsh winters, right? You get a lot of snow and big time wind up there in the wintertime when the storms come in. But one would think here that the spring and summertime, when everything's melted, would be a good time to go fix those instruments. I mean, if they need someone to do it, let me know. I would gladly love to go for a little hike and fix some stuff up there. So this is Mount Rainier GPS. This is a vertical displacement chart. Fairly neutral. If you look here, there's no offset here that would tell me that things are on the move in terms of inflation. This is current, nothing of out of the ordinary that we've seen here since 2020, and I'm sure before. So there's no inflation going on. That's what you would want to look for at a volcano. Just a lot of earthquake activity. And throughout that earthquake swarm here, we notice a northward migration. That's why this seismograph station here picks up more of the noise and the earthquakes compared to the station down here. But that looks like it went offline here about 1 o'clock this morning for some reason. That's off. I hope they don't pull the plug on any of these, because very important to be able to look at the raw data here. Those are all earthquakes. There should be 20 or 30 or more listed on this map here for the last 24 hours, but it's not. I get it. It's just coming back from the weekend, Monday morning, but I really think here, instead of saying that everything's returned back to normal and the swarm is over, to be a little bit more transparent, in reporting to the public the information that's obviously clear as day. There's still quite a bit of earthquake activity occurring out there. But fluid movement at this point. Not magma movement, but very hot water down there. All right, so let's go ahead and when I talk about, a couple of these volcanoes out here showing some elevated seismic activity, it all has to do with the Cascadia subduction zone here. We wouldn't have these volcanoes without it. Juan de Fuca plate subducting underneath the area, and of course that slab of land melts down way below, and it fuels and charges up the volcanoes. There's been a lot of tremor activity out here. Nothing of anything extraordinary as far as anything we haven't seen before. There were some big events here in years past. Notice these spikes here on the graph indicating daily elevated charts. Now, we haven't seen anything like that, but what we have noticed, I've noticed here, is more tremor occurring in a shorter amount of time period, but not on daily counts. Like some of those counts were close to 1,000 a day. We've been averaging around 300 to 600 or so a day, which is lower than some of these elevated counts, but it's happening more frequently in terms of, say, for example, weekly or monthly counts. This is just here in the last 24 hours. Yesterday, we haven't got today's events yet, but there is 336 epicenters, mainly underneath the Washington and Oregon area. Washington has been, let's go back here to last week. Washington's been the one that's been getting a lot of activity, but that would make sense there, right? This tremor activity is occurring about 45 kilometers or so underneath this area into the subduction zone. And it is doing something here to the volcanoes to the east in the Cascades, whether getting them charged up or doing something. It's definitely stirring some earthquake activity up there across those volcanoes. And that's just a portion here of the Cascadia subduction zone that you can kind of spot here. Again, this is happening underneath the locked area of the Cascadia. Sits offshore here, and you can see it clear as day. As far as the subduction zone goes, it extends from the Queen Charlotte Sound area all the way down here in Northern California, right about the Mendocino Triple Point boundary here, with the northern end of the San Andreas Fault in, so to speak, right about this area. All right, so we'll continue to watch that. Even though they're not showing anything, I do want to point out that the swarm has not calmed down. California, a couple earthquakes out there. One off the San Andreas Fault on the west side of the San Joaquin Valley near the Avenal area. That's off the, that's definitely off the Parkfield section. This area, this little chunk of the San Andreas Fault coming up here, I think, on a regular reoccurrence interval of a 6.0 earthquake. It normally happens every 20 to 22 years, and the last one was 2004. So we're well, definitely within that time period. And then, of course, everything out here, if you think about it, is coming up, because there's been so much time that has passed since different segments of the San Andreas Fault have ruptured. Got a little interesting sequence here, more so down south, and as you work your way up north here, less time. Of course, 1906, the northern segment there resulted in a 7.9 earthquake, the San Francisco earthquake. Big earthquake. Something like that today would be devastating. Now, whether there's enough time that has passed and stress that has built since 1906, that's well over 100 years. I don't think we have as much of a possibility of seeing something big happening up here compared to these areas down south here, even the central portion. That a lot of time has passed out here. The southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, normally it can rupture in the entirety, right? And it starts about Parkfield here all the way south, including sections down here of the Salton Sea, near the Salton Sea area. But last time it ruptured there in 1857 with a 7.9, it failed to take this area with it. So this has actually been 300 years or more since this portion of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault ruptured. So with this amount of time that has passed, and this one, really ready to go, the next event, I feel, will take the entirety here of the southern branch of the San Andreas Fault, resulting in an 8.1. This little section here, extra section of the plate, will take that 7.9 to an 8.1 magnitude, which is a lot more energy. But today, it looks like a typical day down there. Nothing above 2.5. A couple smaller earthquakes out there. San Andreas Fault continues to build up some strain. Yellowstone National Park, nothing going on up there for now, at least according to the USGS there. New Madrid seismic zone, got one earthquake outside of Memphis. Up in the Arkansas area, it looks like 1.3. That was actually from yesterday. Nothing new to report there today. Typical movement out there in Texas, oil fields. That's the new earthquake country. Well, it's been that way since the oil boom. All right, taking a look here at the rest of the world. The Guatemala area and Middle America Trench. This is major subduction zone here. Been active out here in the last week or so. Number of earthquakes down here across that subduction zone. This is the reason why we get big earthquakes here. This interaction between the portion of it is going to be the North American plate here with the Cocos plate. This is a little smaller plate, and the interaction between the Cocos plate and the Caribbean plate. Very visible here on the plate layout map. This is going to be where the two arrows are pointing. Cocos plate here in kind of a, I don't know what kind of blue that would be. And then the kind of a pink salmon color over here. So very dynamic area in terms of producing big earthquake activity. We've seen a number of quakes here, specifically on the subduction zone in the last week. 5.9 down here with some aftershock sequences. I hope this is not foreshock activity, but the more recent events up north here. So this entirety, a good portion here of the Middle America Trench is trying to adjust, potentially in a big fashion. There's that 5.8 from yesterday. It looks like a number of hours later, a little bit deeper quake there into the subduction zone, a little bit deeper down there. So watch this area closely. any major subduction zone, such as the Middle America Trench, can produce mega earthquakes. I'm talking about above 8. So do have to watch for little clues like that. What's this around Los Angeles here? That earthquake around Santa Clarita, 9:43. So that's just about an hour or so ago. A little 1.5, nothing big. Up into the Alaska area, a handful of earthquakes. Nothing big happening up there. Most of the movement across this area of the Aleutian Trench. And, of course, westward over here around the Russia area, Kamchatka. Back here in July, they seen that 8.8, their largest earthquake here since 2011. 12 earthquakes on the map. Number of 4s, including a 5.2 this morning there into the Russia area. Yesterday, a little deeper quake underneath the Sea of Osk here. That is into the subduction zone. Again, in this area, that 8.8, according to the USGS here, and geologists state that it only partially relieved the strain out here that's been accumulating. This area can see some greater quakes than an 8.8. But this deeper quake here, I'm just wondering if this is done or not in terms of that, maybe seeing something more in terms of larger activity out here, but we'll continue to watch that. Around Japan, fairly quiet. Let's check out the earthquake 3D globe, see what we got. Yeah, pretty quiet out there across Japan right now. Typical movement here into the cluster zone. That's Philippines southward into Indonesia area. A little bit more activity here overnight and this morning into the New Zealand area northward. Let's see, where's that 4.7? Looks like the southern end here of the Kermadec Trench. Watching New Zealand because there's been so much movement north here and a lot of movement south in the last 30 days. Look at that. Bunch of movement happening down south all across the plate boundary. We've seen clusters of earthquakes here as well. Some smaller ones. Some of them are actually shown up there on the USGS map. But we do have to watch areas where that plate boundary is, right? The Hikurangi subduction zone is along the plate boundary. Then you got the Alpine Fault there across the west side of New Zealand, South Island. And both of those zones it's been a long time. 1717, I believe, here for the Alpine Fault. I don't recall the Hikurangi subduction zone, but I know it doesn't have any recent history at all. I think longer than the time span of the Alpine Fault. But that's a quiet zone. While everything else is moving around it, eventually this is going to pop. So we do have to watch for that. It's all about time. And time creates strain and stress out there in terms of plate tectonics. There's a 5.2 coming in right now to the Russia area. Just start talking about how I don't think this is over yet, and we get another earthquake there. That's going to be this seismograph signature right here on the Kamchatka subduction zone. USGS not picking up on that yet, but they will. All right, let's see what else we got here for the worldwide activity. Still got aftershock sequences there following that 6.1 in Turkey. Has it been over 24 hours? I believe it has, right? Why is the earthquake 3D globe still showing that? There we go. Bring that down a little bit. It's hard to tell sometimes where to get the last 24 hours at. It's supposed to be this little line right here, but sometimes that will automatically adjust for whatever reason. But either way, the Atlantic Ocean, pretty quiet. South America, handful of earthquakes out there. Nothing big. Just watch the Middle America Trench. It's definitely showing some elevated activity here recently. 5.2 up there. All right, let's check out space weather activity, see if anything's going on. A little sizzling going on, it looks like. Look at that crackling, sizzling, almost consistent M-flare activity. Let's see where that's coming from. Actually, I know where it's coming from. Two major active regions now, which are the sunspots themselves are pretty much out of sight, but we're still getting those flaring that are shooting way up above those sunspots. So that's why we're able to see them here. And they're still showing up on the solar X-ray flux chart. So we got some C and M flare activity happening from here. Once these are no longer in view, even the height of those flares, we should see that calm down on that chart. But those areas, I think they're going to pick up and produce some X flares, but those will be directed away from Earth. We're left with center disk, not a whole lot, but way out there on the far side, over here on the eastern limb, there's a number of sunspots out here. They're not all that crazy looking, but there is a number of ones out here we'll have to watch. This area is starting to get a little dynamic here, but I think our main threat's going to be back over here on the far western limb, and we'll see what happens here over the coming days. I think flare threat will slow down a little bit once these two completely depart any view within the Earth there. The sun lost one of its eyes, it looks like. This was a scary looking feature here a couple days ago. It'd be perfect for Halloween. But we do have a coronal hole here, number 69, that's facing Earth, and that should shoot off some high-speed solar wind stream. Also, a lot of folks here relating coronal hole activity, and this is pretty much just an area of the sun where the magnetic lines are kind of shooting straight out from the sun, allowing that high-speed solar wind stream to flow out into space and directed to Earth and other planets. Now, a lot of people relating this to the major uptick in earthquake activity here recently, where we had a coronal hole facing us, and we got a decent coronal hole here. This is a fairly large one, so if we're going to see a major uptick in earthquake activity, such as large quakes, then it should probably happen, right? If we're talking about that being the responsible, or at least maybe one of the contributing reasons behind the elevated earthquake activity. We'll see. Like I say, it's a theory that I'm kind of putting together, and I'm sure many other people have heard and listened to as well, that space weather activity, whether it's sunspots, solar flares, large proton events, large CMEs, massive coronal holes, have an effect here on us on the planet in terms of elevated volcano activity, elevated earthquake activity, maybe different unusual weather. Putting this down in my book, watching this, see how the plates behave with this massive coronal hole facing the planet. Either way, as far as the effects go for space weather activity, we should see maybe a little bit of high-speed solar wind stream coming from that area. This is the most recent image here, so it'll take a day or two to get to the planet. I don't see anything in the forecast, though, for now, but we'll check back on that. Go check the flare threat real quick. 50% chance there for M flare, X flare around 10%, but that should drop once those active areas on the western limb completely turn away from view. Hurricane status. Let's go see what's going on out in the Atlantic again. I've been checking this daily a couple times here because we do have some type of massive hurricane that is headed towards the eastern U.S., but looks like it wants to get pulled up north and away from the land. That's the latest model, about the 17th, 18th of August or so. That is good news. If that stays consistent like that, yeah, obviously it's good news. Big hurricane out there. I think maybe up to around a 2 or 3 category strength away from land, but we do have to watch because we are getting deeper into hurricane season. Been pretty fortunate out there across the east and the Gulf here without seeing anything, but that could change. But for now, that one looks like it will stay offshore there, but we'll continue to check back on that. Current severe weather outlook, not a whole lot going on for the severe weather department today, just a marginal risk for some severe weather across Texas and Oklahoma. Little 2% chance of tornado activity, mainly out there around Kansas and Missouri area, eastern Kansas. A little bit of wind and just a small amount of hail threat as well. Really nothing of any major noteworthy activity today. As far as any close approach asteroids go, let's double check that. Don't want to leave that out. Pretty safe out there, looks like. I don't see anything within close range. I always look at this number first, and then I'll look at the size of the asteroid, because it's all about proximity here. That number is what you want to look at. This one's still way outside the Earth-Moon distance, and 160-foot newly discovered airplane size, but that's coming in August 17th or so. But that, again, that's a ways out there. All right, folks, I'm going to call it. It's supposed to be about 107 degrees today here in Northern California, so probably going to stay inside and hang out here, maybe on the live stream. Don't forget, we do have the member drawing coming up here on the 20th of this month. It's something we've been doing for a number of years, where we just show a sign of appreciation to our members by giving back. Either if you want a $50 Visa or MasterCard, any type of gift card like that, Earthmaster merchandise, you're welcome to. We can hook you up with a shirt. Or if you want like a geology mining kit, there's a couple different options there on the prize options. And again, we're going to do 2 members. We're above 100, so I said as long as we're above 100 each month for the member drawing, then we'll pick out two winners. So yeah, we'll do that on the 20th of this month here. So you got about 9 days or so. So jump on board. It's something we do live. We've been doing it, for a number of years here, and just a little sign of a show of appreciation to the members out here that help support us. Also, you get access to extra videos that are not made publicly, just for members only, and those are not really related to earthquakes or volcanoes or anything else I discuss here on this channel. It's more of a personal daily or just an event that maybe we're doing with the family, just more of a personal side of things, which not everyone's into. They just want to know about what's going on in the science world. But also we give that option there to our members that do want to maybe learn more about us. Anyway, folks, have a good one. We'll see you guys out here for the Monday night update. Take care.